This is the story of how I spent dollars on exercise equipment. It all started when I was 16 years old. I was pushed into my first triathlon. I did not want to race, I had no interest, but I was volunteering and my dad was racing, so I ended up being in the same vicinity, and my dad ended up pushing me into this triathlon. I used every excuse. I didn't want to do it, I wasn't feeling great, it was last minute, but most important was I did not have a bike. I did not have a bike, and because I didn't have a bike, there was no way for me to race. Well, this problem was solved when one of my dad's friends loaned me his bike so that I could race in this triathlon. With pretty much every excuse kind of solved for, I did race in that triathlon. I placed well in that triathlon and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it a lot, and because of that, I wanted to do more. I knew that for me to do more, I needed my own bike. So I found a bike. It was listed for $1,000. We ended up negotiating and I purchased my bike for $900. Adding in some accessories such as a clipless pedals, very, very, very cheap bike computer, and a saddlebag, plus a couple of tools associated with that saddlebag. I ended up spending about $1,200 on my bike and bike accessories. So with my bike and bike accessories, I was on my way to exercise. I used that bike a lot. I used it to race in triathlons. I used it for a Gran Fondo, and then I also used that bike on family trips. We took it to Oregon for a family trip, and we had some good fun riding that bike there. That bike was my first major purchase, but there were some other necessities that I needed to purchase to go along with this bike. I wanted a train inside when it was cold, so I ended up being gifted for Christmas a very cheap indoor trainer. That was about $100. I also needed to get some biking shorts, something to be more comfortable in as I rode, and that was around $400. Biking wasn't the only exercise I was doing. When I was in high school, I was on the swim team. I was also running, so clearly I just had my normal tennis shoes for running, but swim team, I needed jammers and I needed some goggles as well. So jammers were about $20 and the goggles were also around $20. This is the equipment that I had before I stopped exercising. In all, the equipment I used before I stopped exercising was $1,380. Add in that deal that I saved the $100 on my bike, that's $1,480 that I ended up spending. Now, I ended up falling out of exercise. I graduated high school. In college, I didn't exercise as much as I should have, as much as I wanted to, but ultimately I did end up starting exercise again. That process began about 4 months ago. And ultimately, there were some things that I needed to buy to ultimately get myself back into equipment ready. The equipment that I've listed already is the equipment I had and have continued to use. My bike shorts, my bike shoes, the bike accessories that went along with it, the swim jammers, as well as the swim goggles. Those are all things that I still use that I purchased a while ago. And ultimately I'm including in this total, in this tally, because I still use them, even after I hadn't used them for years. 4 months ago, I started exercising again. I knew that I needed some motivation to exercise. And for that reason, I ended up purchasing my Garmin watch. It's been a great asset. It's been amazing. I keep track of everything, and it's definitely motivated me to stay on top of exercising. How much was my Garmin watch? It was $350 without a student discount. I used a student discount, and with that, it was just under $300. It was like $298 plus some change. So that was my Garmin watch. There were some other big purchases that I needed to do to get started. My next big purchase was my pair of running shoes. That was $140. And after tax, that was closer to around $150. Because it had been years since I rode my bike, there were some mechanical things that I needed to take care of with my bike as well. So I needed a new tire. That ultimately ended up being $68 for a tire lube, and then an extra $5 to purchase the tool to change the tire. The last big purchase that I made was a race registration, and that was $55. All in all, that's been all of my major purchases, but I've been very blessed to have a lot of things given to me, and some people don't have those things quite given to them, and so I want to mention how much those expenses would be if I needed to pay those expenses myself. The first, and actually the major one that I have had the benefit of receiving based off of my student status, is I'm allowed to use the school gym. So I can use the pool. That saves me $65 a month. You take that into a year, it is $780 a year to use a gym that has a pool and excellent facilities that I don't have to pay for right now, that a lot of other people do have to pay for, or if they want to pay for it, they can do that as well. In total, the amount of exercise equipment I use is $1,855. And that is the story of how I've spent $1,855, and I have also been gifted a lot more based off of friendships, family, and my status as a student. I hope this information is helpful to you in knowing about how much you should expect to spend. This is on the cheap end of what I do. It's unfortunate to say that $1,800 is on the cheap end, but there are also other things that you don't need. You don't need a watch. You do need running shoes, but you don't need the watch. If you will need a bike, but you can get a cheaper bike. You could ask somebody to borrow their equipment, and ultimately you can just slowly start building this up. That's what I've ultimately had to do. This $1,800 I've spent has been slowly building up. And a lot of it, the vast majority of it, I spent back in high school. But that's just some information for you to glean and hopefully help you to get exercising. It's not a terrible barrier of entry, running especially. Get a nice pair of running shoes, wear that. That's not a ton of money to spend to ultimately get started into running. Swimming, also super straightforward. A swimsuit and a pair of goggles, that's about $40. That's most of what I spent on swimming. The expensive part there is going to be your gym membership. If you don't have access to a free gym, your options include open water swimming, which you can't do during the winter, and going and actually getting a gym membership, or if you are in some financial situations where it's not feasible to get gym memberships, there are some programs that do offer sponsorships. I think the YMCA does some sponsorships for low-income households. Those are some other options that you could explore. So swimming, cheap besides the gym. Running, cheap, unless if you want to upgrade to get something like a running watch, or if you want to get more expensive shoes, things like that. Running outfits also can get expensive, but you don't need those outfits. I still don't have those outfits. I run in water wicking shirt. Most of the time in the winter, I don't. I wear it in a couple of layers, and then I've worn my running shorts that I've had for ages, and honestly, I don't know how much those were, but I know they were cheap. As far as biking, that's going to be the most expensive barrier to entry, and that is because you need a bike. The pedals and the other stuff all will come after the bike. The clothing you wear is also more expensive, but I've been very blessed where I've had a lot of this equipment gifted to me as well. A couple of my cycling jerseys have been gifted. One of those came with the Gran Fondo that I did back in the day, and that was a gifted registration for Christmas back when I was in high school. So there's a lot of this equipment that ultimately, if you know the right people and if you want to get started, you can make those connections. If you go to a bike store, you ask about events, ask about a bike, they'll be willing to help you out. It's an open community. It's a community that wants to grow. And if you want to get involved, it's something that they are willing to help out with as well. And I hope you can figure it out. I hope that you continue to follow my journey as I get fit again. I'm doing better. The holidays I haven't been as good, but we're working on it. Okay, have a good one. Bye.